an inquiry into child sexual abuse, but it wasn't about the rape gang scandal. In its 468 pages, it mentioned Rotherham just once.
It's the most important story, in my understanding, in British politics in our lifetimes. I think it will have a far greater impact in the long term than Brexit, for instance, which everyone has thought was the biggest issue of the last decade.
Keir Starmer is facing the ultimate political nightmare as world leaders turn their backs on him, leaving his leadership hanging by a thread. What led to this shocking fallout, and can he recover from this global snub? In today's video, we'll discuss the key events that led to this international rejection, the growing political pressure at home, and what it means for Starmer's future on the global stage.
2 words is Elon Musk, simply that. The man possessed of this enormously powerful megaphone, this huge soapbox, is on it and taking part in the debates like any other member of X, formerly Twitter, which is in itself is hilarious. It's like the Roman emperor going through the streets in disguise and mingling, with the peasants in the market.
Hey, quick favour before we move on. If you find this political content interesting, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. Most of you watch without subscribing and it's free, but it helps us out so much. Have you done it yet? Thanks a ton for the support. Now let's get back to the video.
How do you think Elon Musk is transforming British politics?
Well, thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here. And the first thing I would say is this couldn't have happened without digital technology and social media, and new media in particular. So we are in an uncharted waters, really.
Politics often hinges on strategy, but what happens when personal dynamics and national pride come into play? Starmer's leadership is facing unprecedented challenges as key allies like the United States, Canada, and Australia appear to distance themselves. From trade disputes to diplomatic snubs, each development highlights a leader struggling to hold his ground under growing international scrutiny.
In its 468 pages, it mentioned Rotherham just once. Is the Prime Minister confident that we know the full extent of rape gang activity?
Appointing an ambassador is usually a routine diplomatic move, but Starmer's choice of Peter Mandelson for the US role has ignited controversy. Mandelson's connections to China have drawn heavy criticism from US officials, including former President Donald Trump, who views the decision as a pro-China signal. Trump's outright rejection of Mandelson is more than a diplomatic setback. It's a direct challenge to Starmer's government and its credibility on the global stage.
Appreciate that, and I appreciate it today. Mr. Speaker, on the question of a further inquiry, there have been a number of inquiries, some of them localised, including the Mayor of Manchester's inquiry recently, and of course a national inquiry Professor Jay carried out, took 7 years, had 20 recommendations, none of which actually were implemented.
For years, Mandelson has been associated with Chinese economic policies, often speaking favourably about their strategies. This has made him a contentious figure, especially given Trump's tough stance on China's trade practices. By nominating Mandelson, Starmer may have inadvertently signalled a misalignment with UK's priorities, straining the relationship between the UK and its closest ally.
But they didn't circulate, and they didn't have an instant effect of this kind. Musk's opinion has dynamited British politics more than once, in that he's able to engage in front of millions of people and to force a response from government ministers.
Starmer's strong focus on building ties with Europe and China has further strained the already tense relationship with the United States. This approach has sparked significant criticism, especially in light of his government's controversial decision to send party members to actively campaign for US Vice President Kamala Harris in critical battleground states during the election season. Louis, the move has drawn sharp backlash from Trump's allies, who viewed it as an unwelcome and inappropriate intervention in American domestic politics. Trump's campaign went as far as to accuse Starmer's Labour Party of meddling in US elections, a charge that has only added to the growing rift between the two nations. Many saw this act as a betrayal of the long-standing alliance between the UK and the US, further complicating Starmer's efforts to navigate international diplomacy and maintain Britain's influence on the global stage. Such actions have fueled perceptions of the UK under Starmer as misaligned with its closest allies' priorities, raising questions about his leadership and its impact on the historically strong transatlantic relationship.
In the case of the grooming and rape gangs scandal, is only the latest, and in effect, elected politicians in Britain, and also the bureaucracy, are now accountable to one of the world's richest people. And the question is whether this is for the good now, and whether it might be for the good or bad in future with a different person in that position.
Do you think that the Labour Party and Keir Starmer...
The UK has long cherished its special relationship with the United States, a bond forged in World War II and solidified through decades of partnership. However, this alliance now appears to be under threat. Starmer's perceived neglect of this historical connection is not just a diplomatic error, but a troubling sign of Britain's diminishing influence on the global stage.
Rape gang scandal. Across the country, thousands of girls were tortured and sexually abused at the hands of men who treated them as things to be used and disposed of, destroying many lives forever. The Prime Minister has mentioned previous inquiries. He is right, there has been an inquiry into child sexual abuse, but it wasn't about the rape gang scandal.
As Starmer continues to focus his attention on strengthening ties with Brussels and Beijing, the UK's relationship with North America appears increasingly neglected. Nations such as Canada and Mexico are actively solidifying their partnerships with the United States, reinforcing trade agreements and boosting security cooperation. Meanwhile, the UK's absence from these critical discussions has not gone unnoticed, raising concerns about its diminishing role in shaping key global policies. By failing to engage more meaningfully with North American allies, the UK risks missing out on significant economic opportunities and crucial strategic collaborations that could bolster its global influence. Over time, this lack of involvement could lead to long-term consequences, leaving Britain at a notable disadvantage as other nations build stronger and more dynamic alliances. Without a clear strategy to reassert its presence, the UK may find itself increasingly sidelined in vital global matters.
No, right, I don't even want to say the next thing that I want to say, right? It is an absolute, we would look at that and we would say that is a barbaric country. What the hell has happened, Richard Tice, to the United Kingdom I grew up being proud of? It's awful.
Well, I'm afraid to say, Jeremy, the first thing is that I fear that some of this horrific activity...
One of Starmer's most notable diplomatic blunders was skipping Donald Trump's inauguration, opting instead to send an outgoing ambassador. This decision was widely seen as a snub by Trump and signalled that the UK was deprioritising its relationship with the US. Personal connections are vital in diplomacy, and this absence sent a... Starmer's poor judgment doesn't stop there. His decisions often seem focused on short-term political wins rather than long-term strategic planning, leaving the UK exposed to potential diplomatic and economic repercussions.
He's spoken to you about their frustration at being told how they're to vote, and that they, privately of course, you couldn't give away that information, that they would welcome an inquiry and go against what Keir Starmer thinks.
I've not specifically had that, but what I do know is that they will be getting emails in their inbox from their constituents as we speak, and over the course of the next few days, saying, what on earth are you playing at? Particularly when at 7 o'clock tonight, they go through the no lobby and vote against the reasoned amendment by the opposition to have this inquiry. And I think that will look...
Starmer's disregard for Commonwealth nations marks another significant misstep. This network of 56 countries, including fast-growing economies like India and Nigeria, holds vast potential for trade and collaboration. Yet Starmer's government appears more focused on mending ties with the EU, effectively sidelining the Commonwealth and overlooking its strategic importance.
Indelibly marked on their characters for forever.
And that's a really important point, because I'm writing a book, and whilst researching the book, it's absolutely true that it's on public record how your MP votes. I'm not going into why I know that, but it will forever be there. Can I put something to you as well? Keir Starmer is quite possibly the least popular Prime Minister we've ever had, and we had Liz Truss, which has got to be pretty bad. And you keep thinking, if you're me, there's got to be a moment when you listen to the right people or do something that garners a little bit of an uplift. Surely this was his moment to say, yes, I believe there should be an inquiry. By saying no, everybody's picking up on being when he was in charge of prosecutions, the Director of Public Prosecutions. Has he got something to hide? Is he part of this entire establishment?
Yeah.
Adding to the strain are Trump's proposed tariffs on UK imports, which pose a serious threat to industries like automotive and agriculture. These tariffs could drive up prices and result in massive job losses, yet Starmer appears more preoccupied with other global agendas, leaving this critical issue unaddressed. While Starmer's engagement with China might appear strategic, it carries significant risks. Closer ties with Beijing could alienate key allies such as the US, Canada, and Australia, all of whom are increasingly cautious about China's growing influence. Starmer's attempt to balance relations with China while preserving strong Western alliances is a high-stakes gamble that risks backfiring.
And so these are the direct consequences of that. That thirst and hunger by Tony Blair's lot for multiculturalism has directly led to this appalling catastrophe. But I stood up in the chamber today and I said that, sure, the victims and survivors want action now on the recommendations and what we know, but also in many towns up and down the country, most of them, I think, Labour-led in terms of who's leading the council, there are victims and survivors who've not yet got answers.
Domestically, Starmer's leadership is facing growing criticism. Many Brits are questioning why he focuses so heavily on international diplomacy while urgent issues like economic stagnation and the escalating immigration crisis remain unresolved. A leader seen as disconnected from the nation's priorities risks losing trust and credibility both at home and on the global stage.
The bigger issue surely for Keir Starmer is that he lost 5 seats in the last election to Muslim independent candidates who stood up and purely talked about Gaza. And is he frightened that he'll lose his majority of seats north of Watford Gap if he dares to stand up and address an issue that, as you rightly say in Reform, affects millions of people in this country?
To regain the UK's standing on the global stage, Starmer must enact meaningful changes, rebuilding trust with the USA, broadening diplomatic efforts, and prioritising stronger ties with the Commonwealth are essential steps. Ignoring these priorities risks further isolating Britain in an increasingly interconnected world. Take India, for example. With its rapid economic growth and rising geopolitical clout, India has become a key player in international trade and security. Despite its historic relationship with the UK, India has shifted focus toward partnerships like the Quad Alliance with the US, Japan, and Australia. Similarly, Brazil has solidified its leadership in South America, using its agricultural and resource-driven economy to secure favourable trade deals with global powers such as China and the EU. These examples highlight the importance of proactive, strategic diplomacy to keep the UK competitive on the world stage.
In terms of the political influence that Elon Musk is having, can you just assess whether that's on the grooming gangs issue or helping reform the UK? How is he impacting British politics?
Well, if he's able to donate to Reform UK on the scale that he's talking about donating, and if he's allowed to, which is pretty much what it'll come down to, then this will revolutionise British politics and drive it much closer to the American-style model, where a vast amount of money can be funneled into political campaigns.
Starmer's leadership has reached a pivotal moment. The decisions he makes in the months ahead will shape whether the UK retains its global influence or risks fading into irrelevance. To secure Britain's future, he must focus on rebuilding key alliances, strengthening strategic partnerships, and fostering clear, effective communication with the public. Stay tuned as this political drama continues to unfold, with twists that could reshape the global stage. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis and updates.